Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to share with you one of the ways I like to add non-traditional things to make unique things for my card making. In this case, I got this dollar store placemat for Easter, obviously, as it's shaped in an egg. And I'm going to cut it down and I'm going to use it with my Big Shot machine, and I'm going to emboss the texture from this embossing mat for the background for my card. Now, the other thing that this could be used for is with jelly printing. I could make some interesting jelly prints with it, using it either as a stencil or as a mask when I want to put some paint on there. There's a little bit more dimension to this than a regular stencil though, so you'd have to keep that in mind. But it's just a fun way to make something a little bit more unique that no one else has, unless someone sees what you did and decides to do the same thing. So I've got it cut down. I cut it down to 5 by 7 because when I'm making cards, that's the largest card size I typically make, so I wouldn't need anything bigger than that. I've got it in my Big Shot machine with the multi-purpose platform and the top tab open. I've got a cutting plate below it. I put cardstock on top and a rubber embossing mat, and what that's going to do, it's going to add, when the pressure goes through the machine, when it runs through the machine, it's going to push all of the cardstock in those nooks and crannies of that placemat. I also have my cutting plate on top of it as well. So there is just the plain embossed paper. Now we can step it up a little bit and we can add some ink to that placemat and ink while we emboss. So for this one, I used some oxide ink just because it's a little bit more opaque, and I thought it would stick to the embossing or to the placemat a little bit better, and you can see where you put the ink a little bit easier. I'm going to do the same stacking as the first one. I've got my multi-purpose platform, top tab open, cutting plate, placemat, cardstock, rubber embossing mat, and then a cutting plate on top of it. And once again, running it through the same way. The difference with this one is because I've got some ink on that placemat, you need to make sure that you don't accidentally move it or shimmy it in place while it's going through, just because we don't want to disturb that ink and have it smear. So there I've got my two backgrounds here. If I wanted to take my plain background and add ink, the easiest way to do it would be with a brayer and just rubbing it over that ink pad and then inking it on. If you were to take a stamp pad and just do it with a stamp pad, you might get a good impression, but it's really, really easy to make a mistake and get a little bit of ink on the background. So by using a brayer, you have a little bit more control. Just make sure to clean off your tools before you put them away so that you know that when you go to use it the next time, you're not going to get that purple ink on the next project. Now I wanted it to be a little bit more subtle than the look that I got. So I took a blending brush and I'm just blending that ink out. I'm not pressing really, really hard. The oxide ink takes a little while to dry, so that ink is still a little bit moist. So by brushing it out, I just get a little bit of a purple background as well as my purple print. I'm not completely eliminating the print at all. I'm just making it a little bit more subtle. But it's one of those things that's personal preference. If you liked it the way it was with the black or the white and the purple, you can leave it as is. I just wanted to show a little bit more, or a few different ways to do this. Now that I have my background inked, I'm going to glue it to the back of the card. Because this particular placemat creates quite a busy background, busy for me anyways, I tend not to do a lot with prints. I'm going to keep the design of the card very simple. So I've glued them onto the background. I'm going to let that dry completely. Off screen, I took this Mega Hello die and I cut it with some scraps of cardstock in colors that coordinated. I kept everything purple and white. I didn't want to introduce any new colors to this. I just chose scraps that matched the purple that I have in my card as close as possible. And I stacked them together and now I'm gluing them to the front of the card. I have these butterfly embellishments that I did in a previous video. I'll link to it at the end of this video. I'll also put a link to it in the description down below, as well as all the other supplies that I'm using for this particular card. And I'm just adding that to the card. The nice thing about making a whole bunch of embellishments like I did with these butterflies is I have them on hand to grab for a quick embellishment for a card, so I don't necessarily have to stop to create custom embellishments. They're just a nice thing to have on hand. So I did the same exact design for my second card, just using that Mega Hello die. And then I'm also using one of the butterfly embellishments that I have already made. I like to put an acrylic block on my piece while it's drying. It frees up my hands to do other things, and it holds it down in place, especially when you're using embossing folders or embossed backgrounds. Because there's differences in texture, it's nice to have something to hold it down. To add a little bit of sparkle to this particular card, because there's already sparkle in that butterfly, I'm taking some stickles and I'm just putting it on the white part of the hello die. It's just going to tie that embellishment in a little bit more, as well as add a little bit of sparkle and interest to the card. I also put it in the center of a couple flowers that you could see. I probably shouldn't have done that because Distress ink is water reactive. So when it touched the ink, it changed the color a little bit. It made it bleed a little bit. Didn't ruin the card in any way, but in the end, I wish that I hadn't done that. So maybe do that on a scrap first, just to see if you like the look first. With the second card, I'm taking some glossy accents that I have in a fine bottle with a really fine tip. And I'm doing the same thing as the first card. I'm putting it on the white part of the hello. The reason I didn't do stickles on this particular one is because my butterfly embellishment doesn't have any stickles on it. I probably could have added it, but I wanted both cards to be slightly different from each other. The butterfly embellishment did have some glossy accents on it, so this is tying that in again as well. Now when you use glossy accents and you're done, make sure to tap it on your desk, squeeze a little bit so that if any is in your fine tip there, it comes out. That way you don't have to worry about having it clogged the next time. So there we are. We have two very simple, very easy cards, and just a different way of using things that you may not have used for card making in a unique way. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you have a fabulous day.